Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 680. I'm Tom Kegley, your host today. Mauricio Aguiar and Christine Green join me to discuss the state and future of software metrics. Mauricio, Christine, and I are all past presidents of the International Function Point Users Group, the largest international software measurement association. The conversation is both provocative and enlightening. Note, the audio on my voice in the interview is a little bit muffled, but the important parts of the conversation come from Christine and Mauricio's lips, which aren't muffled. I know what the issue was, and I've added a step to my interview checklist when I'm doing interviews outside of the studio. A few facts about Mauricio and Christine. Mauricio Aguiar is the founder of TI Metricas, a leading software measurement company based in Brazil. He holds a bachelor's degree in engineering from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. Mauricio was elected president of the International Function Point Users Group twice, 2005 to 2007 and 2017 to 2019. Christine Green is the founder of IP by Green, a senior consultant and also a past president of IFPUG. She just ended her presidency at the end of October 2021. Are you ready to talk measurement? It's time for the interview.
Christine Green, Mauricio Aguiar, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
You know, this is exciting. All three of us have been very recently, within the last at least 6 or so years, the president of the International Function Point Users Group, which I would suggest still is the largest software measurement association in the world. Would we all agree to that?
I think so too.
Cool. And all of us now have stepped away from that top podium. And so it's time to reflect a little bit, especially as 2021 draws to a close, about the state of the software measurement industry, perhaps where we think it's going in the future. That's always fun at the end of the year to think about. And then personal reflections on what it was like to actually lead, some of us multiple times, an organization that spans the world. I've often heard it described as herding cats. So why don't we start with, where do you think the world of software measurement is today? And Christine, why don't you start first?
I think that the world of software measurement today is probably stronger than it has been for the last 20 years. I've seen an increase during the last 6 years that the three of us has been presidents of the understanding and need for software measurement. There was a period of time where it seemed like if you were agile, you didn't need to use it, but that seems to have changed over the last years.
Interesting. I'm not 100% sure I've seen that here in the States, but it's, I think there is sort of a mixture of things going on. Mauricio, where do you think we are today?
Well, I agree with Christine, and particularly about Agile. In Brazil, where I live and work, we really have to do some kind of teaching people about the use of software measurement with Agile in Agile environments and the value it has. And because we focus on productivity here as opposed to estimating, we really show that whatever method you use, there is a product which is delivered, which is useful, and that can be measured and can be sized. And once it's sized and you know how much it costs, you'll have a measure which is useful to compare projects, suppliers, and make good decisions about how to proceed with development. There is a current here that Agile guys who don't want to measure anything. I actually had someone from a client tell me, in a meeting something like, I don't want to be measured. And I said, well, it may not be up to you to decide whether you will be or not. And I was representing the stakeholders who hold the purse strings to the money. And I said, as long as there is money, people will be concerned about cost per function point, or, some kind of unit cost in any industry, because you need to stay competitive. So that's the perspective we use here. And we have acquired new clients which had never used this kind of method before in the last 2 years. I mean, during COVID era, so to speak. And so I trust that software measurement will continue to grow. And the only thing is that it's really hard for us practitioners to do this, because there's a lot of, marketing and teaching involved. If you just let it go, people don't understand the value it has. That's what I can say for now.
There are a couple of things I'd love to pull the string on, but why don't we go down the path of the associations like IFPUG, International Function Point Users Group. I will stop saying all of those letters together. I'll just do IFPUG from now on. Do you think it's the role of IFPUG to, and I'll use a marketing term, make the market so that it evolves forward? Is it IFPUG's role to train and communicate and help people think about software measurement? Or is it vendors or someone else that should be making that market?
In the past, it was probably the vendors, because they had such a strong position within the business area. But in the current climate, I believe, and that's the change that we have made over the last couple of years, is that IFPUG needs to be a lot stronger in communicating the message out to leadership, to those making decisions about what processes to use, where in the past we probably was more focused on making sure that the IFPUG sizing standards was used in the right way. So I do believe IFPUG has a responsibility to educate not only IFPUG specialists, but also those that might consider using IFPUG methodologies within their way of purchasing or delivering software products.
No, I can't say that I agree with that. And I'm one of those who maybe didn't see that so clearly in the past. And one of the points that I think is very important is that we as IFPUG, I still feel like I'm part of it. I mean, as a member, at least, we are very democratic, and that's something wonderful. And we are multicultural, multi-country. So it's not always easy to get a single, direction from all those people, those wonderful people who have different needs, different environments. So I think it's always been hard to do what's best, because what's best is not the same thing for everyone. And so I think Christine has summarized this very well, saying that we need to educate people. And I'm not talking about our peers here, like measurement guys. We need to educate companies. I'm not saying C-level executives, because they're very hard to reach. We have tried this over and over, and it's difficult. We have to educate middle-level managers and practitioners on the business meaning of measurement. And most of the time, people close to us are interested in how to measure and how to learn, how to build a career. And we need to shift the point of interest to the business value of what we do. And I'm not saying anything new, this is clear to most of us, but how to do this is not easy at all. Otherwise, it would have been done, more effectively and long ago. And now I know that we have been changing, and I trust that the next years will bring good news about this point.
if you're not communicating with the C-level executives, how do you ingrain software measurement in organizations? Just from my own reflection, there are generally two paths to change, and that's either top-down through the top of an organization, or, and I don't think it's anywhere near as effective, bottom-up. So creating a grassroots movement. Agile caught on as a grassroots movement to an extent, and then started coming top down when the things like the CMMI were important. And that probably irritates my CMMI friends, but at least in the States, it's more of a certification thing, right? That's what's important. When it first took off, it was a bottom up thing. It got to a point where it then had to be top down, but it came from that C-level. How do you affect the organization, any organization, if you have to talk to the middle layer, which everyone at the middle layer has a different set of needs?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you my experience and perspective, which is not everybody's. I can't say anything that includes the word any. But what I'm going to say is C-level executives are people too, and they protect themselves very hard against everybody else's opinions, because everybody wants a piece of their ears, want them to listen to something, usually self-serving. And they trust a few people. And some of those guys they trust are middle-level managers and are there because they put them there because they trust them. Those are the guys we talk to. We find those guys, or usually it's not our merits. They find us. They are middle-level managers who are looking for ways of doing, better, or pleasing their C-level executives there who trust them so much. And so we have repeatedly been found by people like that who find us. And then I remember once I went to talk to the CIO of Santander, which is a big bank, has a presence in Europe and in the United States and in Brazil. And he said, well, I wanted to know you because I know you were involved with function points in Brazil from the start. And the reason he wanted to talk to me was because somebody told him that, that function points were useful and that I was associated with function points. So I don't know if that happens to you guys too, but I never reached out for that guy. I didn't even know who he was. And that's how Santander became our client. So this is usually what happens. We never reach the C-level executives directly because they won't respond to us. But there's someone they trust who is at a lower level and who is in charge of looking for something like what we do, or ways of having better estimating, or having improving productivity. And those guys find us. That's the way I have seen. I don't know if there are any others. Then maybe.
Steve, thoughts?
But I agree with Mauricio. I think one of the issues that we have is that a lot of the people who know something about IFPUG is detailed oriented, and they are not C-levels or
probably not middle level execs either.
Used to communicate with those. Last year, I was fortunate enough to co-work with a guy who was used to communicating with C-levels and create a presentation about IFPUG. And it was very mind-blowing to me because I'm used to being this person who, in presentation, describe, the details, the process, and use a lot of words. It can be seen on YouTube, the presentation from December last year. And the presentation was very, very different from what I was used to. But we actually managed to, with this guy, kind of like targeting the C-levels that he knows, to target C-levels both in the US, Poland, and Denmark, and Switzerland. About 35 C-levels we targeted in that presentation specifically. So I think that it is difficult, and I think that IFPUG as an organization needs help and support in order to reach that level of resources. And when we then do that, we need to make sure that we don't get too detailed oriented when we do it, but that we purvey all the benefits that exist around using IFPUG sizing standards, and especially, of course, the large amount of savings that could be made by introducing this, especially in large organizations like Santander or Vodafone or some of the other companies that we know is using it and has, made a huge financial savings by using it for improving their processes, estimating, and making sure that they get value for money when they engage with the suppliers to deliver their software products.
You'll share the URL so that we can put that in the show notes. Super. That would be good for a lot of reasons, right? So the listeners to the Software Measurement Cast are a mixture of practitioners all the way through there are at least a few C-level execs that actually listen, which is fun. But a number of them are always looking for ways to think about communicating to different audiences. So that would be, I think, very helpful. The whole idea of software measurement, it's different than it was 6 years ago. It's probably going to, in 6 years from now, it is probably going to be fundamentally different based on your experience and the influence that you've had with, the whole idea of software measurement, not just function points, but software measurement. If this were 2028, 2030, where do you think software measurement is then?
My dream and hope, of course, is that software measurement is a much more kind of like natural thing to use. It seems like that a lot of people, the wording that Mauricio was just using was that, and software developer probably said that I don't want to be measured. Now, software measurement does not measure people. It measures the process, it measures the product, and it can support measuring things like time to market, get that, date right instead of fumbling around and keep on moving a go live date. Can be measured using to measure what is the optimal amount of resources, what is the competitive price. So it has so many benefits that is not people related or personal related. And my hope is that we don't have any projects where they don't decide on measure. It doesn't need to be necessarily IFPUG function points or simple function points or snap points, but the fact that we try to be objective and actually measure something else than just time and cost, and normalizing it so that we can learn from our mistakes. And that, I think, probably is not natural for people right now. They need to either be forced to do it, or they have seen the benefits in previous projects in order to do it. So for new people, it's not, natural that they do it. So my hope is that we don't have any projects in 2030 that is not using some type of measure. And I'm pretty sure if that's what we see in 2030, then the amount of money that is lost down the drain due to projects that are delayed or even fail completely and never become a realization for the business, I'm pretty sure we will see a drastic drop in those and have much more successful software delivery.
I'd like to say that there's one thing we face, and there's no way of hiding that, which is politics. And those politics can be summarized as there are suppliers and clients, And once you introduce measurement, if there are cost savings, somebody's going to pay less and somebody's going to get less. So there'll be a conflict. And sometimes in my experience, that conflict has, sometimes one side wins. When that side wins, the organization that's using measurement uses more measurement. And when the other side wins, sometimes we as a company are fired. And there's nothing wrong that we did. Just, the guys who wanted to make more money didn't want us there because we created big savings. And sometimes they are able to create a story that they tell the upper level, the C executives, that tells them that what we do only complicates things and kind of damages the relationships. That's what we hear from people when we ask, why did they stop using what we do? And that has happened over and over years. There are new clients that started using the method. Some of them keep using, like Banco Bradesco, that has been with us since 2003. And some leave. And usually they leave because of politics, the way I try to explain here.
I would like to suggest something that both of you might find controversial, and that's okay. I'd like to suggest, and I think it was Christine that made this statement, that measures don't measure people. I'd like to call baloney on that. I think measurement is always about people. And arguably, most organizations, because of the politics, end up making it about individuals. Now, I'm sure that we can all point to where that didn't happen, but I think measurement is about people. And if we think about it, right, all work is some combination of process, some other forms of resource, and people. And if it's not about people, then aren't we measuring it? Don't we have a whole? So I think it is about people. How do the two of you respond to that?
Well, in my experience, they only compare suppliers, not individuals, but suppliers are, if you're leading
people.
That a group of people who will, probably make less money or have less benefits or less something if they are, at the end of the line of the productivity line. Most productive guys will get more work. Basically, that's what they do. I mean, my clients do that. They have several, at least, or many suppliers, and they make choices based on productivity. So it's about people. Yes, in the end of the day, it's about people, but not directly. And the guy I mentioned, he was the lead of an agile team, and they were getting paid the same amount every month. And the output was variable. As you know, scope was variable, but payment was based on a number of hours, a team of, say, 7 or 10, or I don't remember how many. And they were getting paid the same amount every month. So they were not interested in being measured. And we were not going to measure them, but the output. How many functional points, have you created in the last 6 months, and how much did each one cost? That's what we do. And, simplifying, there are details, of course, you both know. But people don't want that sometimes. That's my point. Christine?
But I think the difference is in the word individual, because I agree with you, Tom, that of course, software development, 80% of the cost of software development is not related to the hardware, but is related to the cost of resources, the cost of people. But I think that the mistake that are being made sometimes is if you start measuring individual people. And I can give you a funny example. And sometimes we want to measure things like the time that it takes to develop something and the amount of defects that is found. But it's not necessarily the case that the tester who finds a huge amount of defects is the poor individual. He or she might be a really, really good tester, and you might even find defects that is not seen as defect from a developer's perspective, but actually is improvement of the product because it wasn't specified to be able to do these things. But in the tester's mind, it should be doing it because it would improve the speed of whatever business process the software is delivering to the end user. So I think that when we look at it from a measurement perspective, you might have a team where the project/program manager is not delivering any value in function points, never finding any defects. But without this person, you won't be able to have an effective teamwork. You might have a product owner who doesn't actually deliver function points per se, but is the one who makes sure that whenever somebody is finding a defect or a process improvement or a feature that could improve the end product, that he or she is capable of prioritizing it. So I think the issue here is that we might be measuring people, but we should never measure individuals. We should always measure, if we're measuring people, measure them in teams. And not for the purpose of making them, feel bad, but for the purpose of finding out how to improve when something is failing, to find out what are the lessons that are positive, the success stories. So I agree with you, we're still measuring people, but never measure individuals. That will just, start a process where people will create very creative workarounds to make sure that they look good in accordance to whatever individual performance indicator that the leadership has set towards them.
All of us have been a leader in international organizations recently. What legacy, on reflection, as you step away from IFPUG's leadership, what legacy do you think you've created, and how do you think it has changed you?
Well, if I were to go first, IFPUG has taught me so much because I was there on the board since the year 2000. That's about a very long time. That's 20 years or 21 years maybe. And there's so much I learned about how to deal with the many issues you face that it would be hard for me to specify the gain I personally had, in addition to meeting wonderful people like you guys. I can think that about the legacy, about things I remember that were done when I was the president, or so much. When I was a board member, I couldn't even count it. I don't know if that's what you're asking, but I remember the automated functional point certification exam that was started on my watch, and that was wonderful because we had many problems with, what if you lost one of those exam boxes? That was my nightmare.
Well, that happened too. We all remember that happening.
Yeah. In the United States, thank God, not in Brazil. I remember that FedEx couldn't locate one of those boxes, but they did after a couple of days. But now I think Christy Lawrence was, she must have gone almost insane with that, because she was, I remember, I think she was the certification chair. So she was in charge of those boxes, and somehow they got misplaced or went somewhere else. That was FedEx. But in Brazil, it was an international operation. The boxes had to go through customs. And customs could open the boxes to make sure there were no drugs in them. So I was very, I didn't sleep until I got someone from the US say that box arrived. Because what would you do if you lost one of those boxes? You would have to approve everybody who was on exam. They would, they would demand that. And you would say, I can't do that. And then what? Legal, problems or, well, that was my nightmare. The second thing I remember, that was from my latest term, that was the simple functional points. And and the time that Roberto Melli, the creator of Simple Functional Points, asked to meet the IFPUG board, and I think maybe both of you were there. I don't remember where it was now, but he went there, and that started the whole thing. And then he decided he wanted us to take over. And now I think it's a very, very important product because it simplifies what we do without introducing too much chaos in it. I mean, variation is small, and some of us had already been doing that with different and very similar methods. And this is not for us to go into the details, right? So that's a new wonderful product, in my opinion, that IFPUG has. That's what I remember. Maybe I remember more, but you don't want to stay here for a whole day, right? Christine, you have a lot to say too, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I think I haven't been on the board as many years as you have, Mauricio, but
you got snapped.
I just think I became a better person by being part of IFPUG on all parameters. I wouldn't have been the software measurement expert today if I hadn't met all the great people that I've met during the last 20 plus years in IFPUG. I've got friends for life among the volunteers that I've been working with. Being part of the SNAP project as the project leader on that one taught me quite a lot about working in an international environment of experts. And being part of the IFPUG board has taught me a great deal about leadership and leadership, behavior, and with help and support from all the great people on the board. Because I think that the great thing about IFPUG is that it becomes almost like a mentor-mentee, that you help each other. It's very clear to me that it's just a great volunteer family of people. So I just think I became a better person all around.
I do think it's about the people. Mauricio, Christine, if you woke up tomorrow morning, somebody handed you your caffeinated beverage of choice and a magic wand and said that you had the power to change any two things impacting software development in its broadest sense, right? In the broadest sense of software development. What would those two things be and why?
I can start. I think I would change the perception of IFPUG specialists being, sometimes they are referred to as bean counters, because the IFPUG specialists that I have worked with, the majority of them are brilliant Lean Six Sigma project managers, software developers, statistical experts. So they are so much more than just IFPUG specialists. If you look at LinkedIn with the background and the experience that these people have, they are very, very knowledgeable people. And that means that even though they might be expert in going in, sizing and estimating and benchmarking for, a client or a supply organization, they are bringing so much more best practice and knowledge into the game that I think most people will see them as invaluable within a short period of time.
That's one.
The other one would probably be reintroducing face-to-face conferences again, because I miss seeing everybody. So that's just, I need to, it would just be so much fun to see everybody again. I think it's been hard during my 2 years presidency that we have had no conferences and no face-to-face meetings. So I miss people.
Mauricio.
Number one would be something general to all the software industry, and that's been heard before. but I just say keep it simple. And you would think keeping things simple would be easy, but existing software companies have painted themselves into a corner, so to speak, that they have built so much software over the last 30 years or so, and they have to keep everything backwards compatible. Like, I'm not saying it's this one specifically, just an example. I have this computer here beside me doing a Windows update. And the Windows keeps getting bigger and bigger, adding updates. And new versions have to do much more than they did before. So maybe they should break these things into smaller products, because I don't need any touch screen thing for my work. I like it on my iPad, but no, I don't need it on my computer. Somebody does. So that somebody gets a specific version of Windows that will do that, and I won't have to carry that around on my computer, which is there too. So computers get faster, theoretically, but they keep going slower, and you have to spend more money. So simple is about that, right? I'm not saying it's just simple, it's like getting a way of, you used the word that when you were president, unturtling the board. You said that the board was going too slowly, and we need to unturtle the board so that the board wouldn't, would not be compared to a turtle anymore, and maybe to a cheetah. What's that?
That would be faster.
Yeah, right. So what I'm saying is that simple makes everything easier, and that's something I have been trying to do with my life. For as long as I remember, trying to make it simple. And sometimes it's just forget about that. It doesn't have to be perfect. In my opinion, it's best to have 80% perfect and very simple than 100% perfect and very complicated.
Okay. So simple being one. What's the
simple
second one?
is number one. The second is a dream, is that I wish that companies would see what we were talking about before, would see the value of having something like a unit price, being able to establish some productivity calculation method so that you will know where you stand. And that goes to that part of measurement where you have your goals and you have obstacles. And you have to be aware of both. I mean, how far am I from my goal at this point? And maybe you have multiple goals, but the measures will tell you how far you are and how big your obstacles are. And obstacles can be risks, which are obstacles that have not actually appeared yet, or problems, which are obstacles that are already there. And all those two types of obstacles and your goals need to be followed up. You need to keep track of those. And unfortunately, many organizations do not do that. And I'm not talking about small ones like mine that maybe don't need to do that, but I'm talking about big organizations that don't really know where they are. When you work with them close, you see that they really don't know where they are. And we help them find where they are. And we don't make the decisions. We just give them the numbers, and they will make the decisions. They may make wise decisions or very unwise ones, like those which are interpreting the numbers to assess people's capabilities when that should not be used, as Christine said. But they will do that all the time. We know that. And well, my wish is that organizations would, pursue that more than they do today. That's number two.
How can people continue the conversation?
As for me, they can email me if they want to. I mean, if my email.
I will put it in the show notes. But what email would you like them to use? You can say it out loud if you like.
Well, it's Mauricio. That's my name. Mauricio at metricas.com.br, and that's Metricas is the word metric.
We'll get that in the show notes.
Oh, yeah, easier because that's not in English, so it's maybe hard.
Understood. Christine.
for me, the easiest is probably to connect to me through LinkedIn. There is only one Christine Green from Denmark. So if you search Christine Green and IFPUG, I'm fairly easy to find.
And I will
Well,
have,
that's good. You can that too. With my name, Mauricio Aguiar, I'm on LinkedIn too. So
I will
that'll be
have
fun.
both of those pieces of contact information in the show notes. And obviously, we want people to go out and go to the IFPUG website, get involved in software measurement, because, well, that's just who we are. Christine, Mauricio, this has been fabulous. Something I've looked forward to. I've been bugging you to do for a few months now. And I'm glad we were able to actually connect and have this conversation. Thank you again for sharing your wisdom with me over the years. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with software process and measurement cast listeners.
In Reread Saturday News, this week, Chapter 8 of Project to Product. I was presented with a scenario this week in which product, UX, development, and testing, and security operated within their own boundaries, with their own goals, and with their own tools. Can you say silos? Chapter 8, Specialized Tools in the Value Stream, directly talks to the impact of silos. In the next Software Process and Measurement Cast, we'll continue our exploration of the team lead's role in Agile frameworks. As with anything that involves human beings and hierarchies, the role is not straightforward. We will also return to the QA Corner to visit Jeremy Berrio. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?